Okay, so we're back talking about our lab questions. We're back talking about our lab questions application. We just went through validating that we did add a picker view to it. Our picker view has the labs that we added in our labs array. We're able to, look at me trying to scroll here. We're able to scroll through our labs questions, right? We're able to select one, great. Now let's go continue working on the controller. When the user is typing in some question, they put in some description and they click on create, that's when we post, that's when we make that post request. So let's keep working on the controller to get that happening there. So let's all go to our create questions controller. Let's all go to our create questions controller. Okay, we have our view did load. Any questions so far about the picker view, right? We use table view, so it's very similar. We got to use it really quickly. The only thing to keep in mind, the components is the same as a column, right? So if you want one component, it's one column. You want other components, it's multiple columns. All right, so let's keep going on here. We need to have some sort of, well, first of all, let me show us a new, go ahead.
I know that's what I'm just curious. If we are to give properties to those components, would you say that components by that one, like, how would you reach the most?
The components are only strings, right? They're strings. And then what gets you those rows is some array of whatever it is.
You have to create an array of components.
Yes. Oh, you also have to give it the data source. So even if you have an object of questions, for example, you could return, you could map your you could map your questions and return an array of titles, for example, right? And you'll get like the titles for the component for the rows.
Okay.
Cool. As long as you give it some array of strings, you're good. Okay, so I want us to see view will layout subviews, and let's see what that does. In our view before, I've shown us layout subviews. Anybody not remember layout subviews? When we did our, we did a custom view at some point with IB inspectable, and we made that view circular. So when we go to our storyboard, the view was circular. We all remember that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So in that layout subviews, this is where we made the circle, or we made the view a circle. Right? Layout subviews on a view, on a subview of UI view, layout subviews gets called when that view subviews is about to get laid out on screen. In a view controller, we have something very similar in a view controller. I think somebody was bringing that up someday at some point. But in a view controller, we have access to this override function called view will layout subviews. My view controller is about to lay out its subviews. That function gets called. So if I want to do any extra work, meaning I want to make something round, or I want to change some frame, or whatever I want to do on my subview, this is the place to do it. Don't do it in the view did load. Don't do it in view will appear. Do it in view will layout subviews. What we want to do here is change the border color of the text view. We want to change the border color of the text view. So first off, always remember on an override function, you call the super of that particular function, the superclass. So here, what do we want to do? We want to change the color and border width of the text view. Because right now we cannot see our text view. Right? We could give it a color. Feel free to design UI whichever way you want, by the way. I'm just making us see what's accessible to us. And accessible to us on a view is the view's border. I've shown us the views or the view layers corner radius. I've shown us that. So we all now could make a view circular, or we could make it rounded rect, right? So far so good. So now I'll give us a hint of what makes the border. Like how can I change the border on a view? Keep in mind, I could also change the radius, the experiment with this. I won't do it, but experiment for now. Experiment with shadows. and views, right? You don't have to do it right now. But the only thing we're interested in here is to change the color and the border width of the text view. So our text view is called, I could type in text view and it's going to come up. Text view is called question text view. On every view, I've said, anytime we get to the layer part of it, anytime we get to the layer part of the view, I've always said every UI view has a layer, right? So think of a pancake as our view. The first pancake is the layer. The second pancake is the view, okay? So every view, you could go beneath that view and do more customization, but you have to do that customization on the layer. Anything you do on the layer affects the view. Anything I do on that bottom top pancake affects that top pancake. Okay? There's a lot of crazy things you could do with the layer. You could see shadowing, you could do a lot of cool things, right? So as developers, as a developer, Xcode is your playground, it's your toy, break it, fix it, make it work, make fancy things, build things, right? It's our playground. So experiment, always experiment. So question, text view has a layer. On that layer, we have a border. We'll first access the border color. You could give it any color you want. Every view has a layer, a CA layer. Let's write it here. So every view, one second, has a CA layer. That's the term. That's the framework for it. CA layer. Right? Every view has a CA layer. Go ahead. Affect the view as well. Like if I change the corner radius of the layer, it changes the corner radius of the view. It's like this. The layer is drawn first, and whatever the layer is, the view is the same. So if I take a cardboard box and I make corner radius, and I put like a blanket over it, it will also have the corner radius. All right, so here we have our border color. I will say UI color, dot system gray. This is new to iOS 13, not available before that. System gray. This is useful for dark mode. So whether you be in dark mode or light mode, I'll still see the color. Anytime I say system color, it's a semantic color. This is new to iOS 13. So semantic colors are new to iOS 13. Semantic colors. Kolawa, what is this? And I write it again. Okay. Semantic colors adapt to light or dark. You guys got really cool things in iOS 13. You should have seen the crowd at WWDC when they saw dark mode. Like it's the best thing since sliced bread. Okay, so semantic colors is great. Anytime you want to do some color, think of a system color. A system color is adaptable to dark mode. If we say UI color.yellow or UI color. Whatever it is, it's not adaptable to dark mode. If we use a system color, it's adaptable to dark mode. So here, a color is not enough. Like this works. If it was a regular view, this would be fine. But this is not a regular view. It's a CA layer. So if you want to have a color on a CA layer, you use a normal UI color. But on that UI color, you have to suffix it with .cg color. So on the end of my system gray, I need to say .cg color. So it converts a UI color to a CG color. So CG color. CG is for core graphics. CG stands for core graphics. And CA stands for core animation. What did we talk about CA? Right here. CA, core animation, and CG. Anytime we've been using CG, but CG is core graphics. And all those are frameworks on the our development documentation, core graphics. Yes, sir?
So which one was it? Is it the layer that affects the view?
The layer is the first. It will affect the view.
But if you change the view, the layer?
The view doesn't have the properties of what the layer has.
Okay.
Right? Like a view doesn't have a border color. Right?
No,
But yes, if you change it, it's also,
it would also
yeah,
but
yeah,
they have different properties.
exactly. Like CA layer really enables you to do like really super cool core graphic stuff. Like you have to get down to the middle. It's like programming languages. Like Swift is a high-level language, meaning it's easier to understand. High-level, easier to understand, as opposed to C, right, where there's pointers everywhere. Cameron could tell you there's pointers everywhere, where you could have asterisk, 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 and then get like, wow, what is this, right? We see one ampersand in Swift, we're like, whoa, right? But when you go to lower level languages like a C or C++, right, it becomes more complex. There's more things you could do, right? Xcode is a playground, great. But there's like, if you go down beneath that, there's more stuff you could do. That's more powerful. Just keep that in mind there. But Apple really strives to make Swift a language everybody could use, and it's easy to understand. So a lot of the intricacies of the frameworks are hidden. Like, for example, when we talk about animations, there's core animations. That's deeper down. You could do a lot of cool 3D stuff there. But you could also do that stuff in the top level UI kit animations. Okay? So with animations, there's two frameworks you could use. You could really go down deep with core animation. But UIKit also is available at a high level. All right, just keep that in mind as we talk about frameworks there. Okay, so we have our border color. We have that. Let's go ahead and change the border width. So border width, I'll go on the layer, and I could change the border width. And here, I could simply say, make it 1. And as I said, in your spare time, you could look at shadows and add shadows to a view, like make it pop out. Really cool stuff. So let's go ahead and run that, and let's see if we actually have some sort of border color showing up in our app. And feel free to experiment with colors, with fonts, with everything. Make your app your app. And we're all coming from different design backgrounds. So here, if I click on the Add button, right, I have my border. Do we all see that? Right? So again, you could you could have shadows where having that view pop out to the user. You could add different shadow depths and stuff like that. Okay. Great. So let's move on here. Say that again. The override function we used was view with layout subviews. If you want to do anything with a subview, this is where you do it. Like, don't do it in view did load, and never do it in view will appear, because that view will appear gets called every time you come back to the view. Yes?
Is that one with also at 1 point?
1 point, yeah, that's 1 point. So you could make it thicker. Like if I increase this border width to 10, it's very thick, right? No, no constraints. The thickness of the border.
Right, but the spacing is the same?
It's nothing to do with constraints. It's just the thickness of the border. Points. Don't get too carried away with the view with layout subviews. This is like the last resort. Ideally, your view code is in a view subclass. Right, everybody? As we go into Unit 4, we'll start doing programmable UI. But you really don't want to put like all your view code in the view controller, then that just becomes like a view, if that makes sense. But when we start seeing like, if you customize in the view, customize the view in its own class. So it encapsulates its own code. Like ideally that should be in a separate class we call create view, for example. Cool, very good. Actually it looks not bad, but I'm not a designer. But your question, sir, the 10 here would make the border thicker.
No, yeah, I understand. Points are the same like unit of it.
Yeah, points is a unit of a pixel. Think of it like that. How many pixels do I want on this? All right, so we'll go back to 1. And we'll go back, and not go back, but we'll add some actions here, because we have 2 bar items. We have 2 bar button items. We'll add 2 actions for those. So the first action, IB action here. What do we have? We have cancel. We have cancel. And what is the type? The type is, what is the type of this button in the nav bar? Is it a UI button?
Which one?
If I have a button in the bar, in the nav bar, what type of button is that? Bar button, right? Bar button item. So this is a type UI bar button item. Very good. So I have my cancel and I have my create. IB action. I have my create. Maybe just call it create lab, create question. Create question. And this is also a UI button item. By the way, you could call sender whatever. I could call it a button if I want. Okay, so we have those two actions. We'll connect them. Our cancel will basically dismiss the view. We've seen it before, but maybe we've seen it again for the first time. When I click on the cancel button, it simply will dismiss that view controller, right? I click on the cancel, it dismisses, it gets rid of the create question view controller. So when I click on cancel, it dismisses the view. So to dismiss the view, every view controller has a dismiss function on it. So I simply type in dismiss here, animated true. We've seen completions before. This is the completion handler. You could pass some code in there if you want, right? Something else to do. When I click on dismiss, do something else. There's something else, I'll put it in the completion handler. But here, we're not putting anything else, so we simply pass in nil. Or you could actually omit the whole thing, like that. Right? Any of those are good.
It's shown not but
We dismiss it. Before iOS 13, we could not swipe down. You guys got a lot of cool goodies. Because sometimes when I have to show something, I'm like, wait, that didn't exist. How is that possible? But iOS 13 makes a lot of things possible to us, right? One of them is simply swipe down. Before, there was no way to swipe down. Once you present modally, you had to have some way to exit with a button, right? Again, you guys, precious. Okay, so when I click on cancel, it's going to dismiss my modal view.
What is animated?
Animated is just animate, like a slide animation by default, just animated. It's no fancy animation.
What would happen if you said false?
Nothing really. You'd see like a slight difference. Okay. For create question, we'll do the same thing, but create question is the big part of our app. Create question is where we actually get in all the fields and creating a question from it. So let's go ahead and do that. Cool. So what are we doing in create question? Yulia, how you doing? Feeling overwhelmed? What part? Those are familiar, right? You've done IB actions before? Okay, let's keep going here. So what do we have? We have three elements. We have a title text field, which we need to grab information from. We have a lab name, which we need to grab information from. And we have a text view, which we need to grab information from. From those three parts of, from those three elements, we'll create a question. Let's go ahead. So what do we have? We have three, almost like required, right? Three required parameters. To create a question object, well, posted question object.
And this will also be posted, no?
Yeah, this is posted question. Our posted question struct. We love guards. We'll use a guard because all our properties are basically optionals. So we'll start off with a guard. We'll say, get me the question title. And the question title, what are we getting it from? Who has the question title? The title text field, very good. All what we grab in information from is optional. So we need to use a guard to make sure all of them have valid values before we say, hey, go create a question. We don't want to create a question with an empty title, right? We're not going to do that. We're not going to create a question with no lab name, and we're not going to create a question without a description. Okay? So all those will be required. So let's keep going here. So my text field.text is an optional. I unwrapped it using a guard. I also want to make sure it's not empty. Okay? So even if the user could totally just press create and it's going to pass the guard because it's not nil. For some reason, textfield.text is nil here, but it's not nil. The user will be able to create an empty title. We don't want to do that. So what we'll do, we'll make sure it's not empty. So question title is not empty. So one thing, we unwrap it, make sure it's not nil. Second, we make sure it's not empty. Okay? Next up, we'll go to the lab name. So lab name, we'll use shadow variables here. Same name for lab name. And lab name is coming from the picker view. Lab name is coming from the picker view, right? We are good there with lab name. We know lab name is coming from our picker view, so we're good. We're not checking for any emptiness there. Next up, we have our question text view. We'll call lab description. Lab description is coming from our question text view.text. Should we check to see if it's empty? Yes, we should. Bless you. Description is empty. That's it. That's all we need. And here in our guard, I've been seeing returns by itself without anything else. Please, that's hard to debug. If you simply have a return here, if you simply have a return with nothing else, it's very hard to debug that code. Because right now, there's nothing in your console saying something went wrong. So we have to come to your computer and say, hey, if I put a breakpoint here, what happens? And it surely comes to the breakpoint. But if you don't have anything above your return, like a print statement or anything like that, there's no way to know what went wrong. Everybody, right? So if you have a fatal error, right, your app will crash if something goes wrong. But we don't want to have a fatal error here. That would not be good. If the user misses some field, you're going to not crash the app, right? Kristen said maybe.
No.
You have a question? You're just stretching? Okay, so return is okay, but we need to let the user know what went wrong. What did we have in our code base to allow us to present something to the user? We used it yesterday. What can I type in here that will allow the user to know what went wrong? An alert. How do I access that alert? We have the extension already. Show alert, right? Very good. We had to do self because we're in a closure yesterday. But here we are not in a closure, so we're not going to say self. We don't need self here. We'll simply say show alert. And we pass in some message. And for here, we'll probably say missing fields. And for the message, we'll say required. We'll say title, description, required. And I'll show us where that show alert is coming from. Because we wrote the extension, we'll go back and see where it's coming from. Yes? Oh, why don't we use self here? So if I put in self here, it's not going to break my code in any way. It compiles, it's fine. But if you submit it to an employer, they'll be like, that person doesn't know that self is not required here. Why are they putting it? And as I said, like some people are very picky with code. If you don't need self explicitly, don't put it. The only places we need self is when we differentiate in between self.name equal name, or we have a closure where we have to capture self because it doesn't know what object you're talking about. So those are the two places you put it, right? Initializer or a place where you have self.name equal name or something like that, or some closure capturing yourself, then you have to explicitly say self. Cool? But in an instance like this, there's no reason to do it. Coding, especially, we need to start looking at coding styles. And right, there's a lot of style guides out there that'll tell us like the best way to write code. And one of those ways, everybody will say, don't use self where you don't need it. One of those coding principles guidelines is on our curriculum. It's from the Ray Wenderlich website, but it's on our curriculum. If we go to our curriculum over the holidays, take a look at it while we're having our turkey. If we go to our curriculum here, turkey, ham, whatever is festive for Festivus. Yeah, there you go. So on our curriculum guide, we have this style guide here. Do we see the style guide? That style guide is coming from Ray Wenderlich. They write a lot of resources on Swift and everything else. So they have a guide that they share to the community. There's principles that you do. There's ways that you write your code. Some people, again, are very picky with spaces. Some people want 2 spaces. If you do 4 tabs, they go crazy. What are you doing? So there's a lot of guides there, a lot of things there, like how you style your code. Google also has a style guide. LinkedIn also has a style guide. So any of those 3 guides you have there will basically come to that same point of good code style. Okay, cool. Good. So great. So at this point, we went through our fields. We got to line 62. The minute we get to line 62, everything went fine. We have our variables that we need. And now we could go ahead and create a question. So let's create a question. So let question equal to posted question. Posted question takes in the following. It takes in a title. We have a title. We pass in question title. It takes in a lab name. We have a lab name. We pass in lab name. It takes in a description. We have a description. We pass in lab description. It takes in a created at a timestamp. We have a way to create a timestamp. We simply say string. Get ISO timestamp. And one way to separate your code or make it look nice is to use returns after every parameter. This guy. My spacing is off. Yours should look nicer because my thing is like zoomed out and all that stuff. We should have like a nice straight line, correct? Okay, cool. Great. So let's review here. Let's see where show alert is before I continue on. And please stop me if anything does not quite add up. So if you command click on show alert, let's see where this is coming from. It's coming from our extension that we wrote. We wrote an extension on UI view controller. That extension is an alert controller. So all what I pass to that function is a title and a message. So I'm not writing this code. Pretty soon we'll see that we need alerts many places. So imagine yourself writing alert code in 5 places, 10 places. Not good. So stop, write an extension, 1 place, you pass it the arguments, you're done. Okay? And we'll come into more different types of alerts. We'll add more extensions, well, not extensions. We'll add more functions as we go. Because we'll see different types of alerts, different types of arguments. We'll write functions for them. So this is where our show alert is coming from. And we spoke about our get ISO stamp already. We saw what that was. And we have our question. Our question is getting there. Cool. But we don't have an API client yet, do we? Okay. We need to go create one. So we need, at this point, if we come here, we'll post using API client. Post question using API client. We have an API client, but that's for fetching. We'll use the same struct, and we'll create a different function. So here, post question using API client to do. So let's go create this function, and we'll come back. Let's go create this function. We'll call it post question. Let's all go over to our lab questions API client. Let's all go over to our lab questions API client. We're in our lab questions API client. So far, we have one function. It's called fetch questions. This objective is to get the questions. That's what enables us to get all the questions in our table view. So when we go to our application here, oh, cancel is not working yet. So here we have our questions coming from the fetch questions. Everybody, right? But now we need to post. So let's go write a function for that. Yes, it takes a question. Yeah. Let me see. Okay, so we good. Let's go write a function here. It's a static function. It's called post question. And post question will take in parameters. One of those parameters will be the actual question. It's a post question type. What else we need in that particular function? It's an asynchronous call. What else do we need? We need a completion. Somebody come and type out that completion for me. Somebody, some volunteer. Come here. You raise your hand.
It's just the same thing that we do, only this time it's what, encoding,
Yeah, just write the signature, like write the completion signature. So put a comma, completion, and then.
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay. Oh. And the completion is either is a result, and the result is either an app error or a posted question. Am I missing something? Oh, and then is that right?
Bill?
Hold on.
What's the error say?
It doesn't conform to.
Everybody sees that. So the ordering is different, right? The result type expects the error to be the last
thing. Okay.
argument there.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. Good. The only thing is change posted question to a Boolean. We'll just return true or false.
Oh, why?
Because we're not going to return the question to the.
We're just posting, doing whether it posted or not.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Oh, 1 second, we're not done. There's something missing, guys. It's an asynchronous call. What are we missing here?
Wait, don't tell me. As I'm looking.
That's like an NPR show.
Question, post the question. Oh. Don't tell me. At escape, right? Sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Tiffany. So Tiffany gave us all the tools we need here. She created the completion handler. It's escaping closure because it's an asynchronous call. The function returns before the closure is complete. She created a result type. The result type takes a Boolean and an app error. And the ordering does matter because result type expects the error type to be the last parameter there, or the last argument. And our closure is not returning anything. Great. Thank you. Let's move on. We need a couple things to set up. We need some sort of endpoint URL. So here we need an endpoint URL string, which is the same string as the get above. Where is it? Here. You can go ahead and copy that string. And we have that string here. Great. So we have our string. Next up, we need to create a URL. So create a URL. We'll use our guard statement to create a URL from that string. We'll use the URL initializer that takes in a string, and we'll pass in our endpoint URL string. If we do have an error here, we have our completion with an error. We failed. So at this point, if we do have a bad URL, we'll simply pass that bad URL back to the view controller. And that bad URL would be the endpoint URL. Yes?
Would it be okay to combine, like, now that we're using the endpoint string and, like, all of the...
Yeah, we could have it in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could have like a static. We could definitely refactor a lot of things here. Anytime you catch yourself, this is exactly what you want to do. You catch yourself duplicating code, stop, create some constant. It could even be in our secrets, maybe, the endpoint URL in our secrets file. All right. Different from above, we need to create data. Different from the function fetch, that's one part that's different already. We need to create data here. We need to create data from our posted questions. Or we need to convert. We need to convert posted question to data. Very similar to what we did in the test. So as a matter of fact, what we did is almost like test-driven development, somewhat, right? We created data, we sent that data to an API, it worked. Now we're using that same information to create our posted question or our post question function. So now we need to convert data. What is the key class we need to convert? What is that key class we need to use to convert a Swift model to data?
Network.
Okay, all right. Collaborative effort. JSON encoder. I'll take it. The key class we need to encode our Swift model to data is JSON encoder. Okay, very good. So let's do that. It's going to be a do catch block because it also could throw an error. And here I'll start off by saying data here. Yeah. Why is it taking a Boolean value? If it's success, we just return true. We're not returning an object to the create question. So in the create question view controller, they'll have an enum type, a result type. Either we have an error or it was true. It's success. Okay. Okay. So JSON encoder here. What are we encoding? Encode. It expects some Swift model that's encodable. You see, the big part of it, the object needs to be encodable. So whatever we encode in needs to conform to encodable. So our question better conform to encodable or we'll get an error. Right? So here we took our Swift model, the question that was passed in here. We have that question here. Now we encode that model to data. Now we have data. Now that we have data, we could go ahead and make our request with that data object. What did we get? What's the question? Where do we get question? Okay, so here let's go ahead and configure our URL request. Again, very similar to the test. We had a URL request, and it takes in certain parameters. Who wants to start me off? What are we doing? I need to configure URL request. What's the first thing I'm doing? var request, very good, Tiffany. var request takes in some URL request. We have a URL, correct? We pass that URL in. Where is that URL coming from? It's coming from line 60. Line 60, we have a URL. What else do we need for the request? Remember, it's a post request we're making. So at this point, you're in the assessment. You're trying to, yes, you have your notes. You have your notes. Yes, sir. Yes, so we need to set the HTTP method as post. Thank you, sir. So here we're going to go after the method. It's a string, right? The method accepts a string, HTTP method, and here we pass the post, and all uppercase. What else does our request need? The type of data. Very good. So here, the type of data, we could put those things in. So type of data. I'm just going to write notes above it. This one is the type of HTTP method. And this one is the URL. URL is URL. Type of data. Request dot add. I'm gonna highlight something really quickly. So the way you could add the type of data, you could do a set value. Set value will override any existing value you have. If you want to add multiple value types, you use add. For now, we'll just use add, but just know the two differences. Set will override anything else that you have before. Add will append. It will append values to your request. Okay? So here we'll simply say add here. For purposes of the assessment, add is fine. And set is also fine because we have only one header. Okay, so value, this is where we say what type of media it is or what type of data it is. We'll say application, JSON. And for the header type, it's a content type. It tells us what type of content it is. So we need to specify content type like that. And those are all standard. This is what you need to do. Whether you're doing JavaScript, Java, Python, Go, R, whatever it is, you're dealing with data, those are the standards. So thankfully, we have standards that we have to abide by. So regardless of what language you write in, you're talking to the web, you're talking to HTTP, you're talking to some sort of header with a content type, that's application the same. It holds for all languages. Yeah? Yes?
So it has to, okay, so if I was to put applications like this on all my JSON, happening,
it would break your code. You would get malformatted JSON. Okay. What else we need? Is that it? Right. So we need the body, as Tanya said. What are we sending up, right? The data we're sending up. So data being sent to web API. Provide. The big thing we're sending up, right? Where's the thing we're sending up? Request dot HTTP body. HTTP body accepts data. We have data, right? We have data above at line 67. At line 67, this is where we created the data from the Swift model. So we simply say data here. If we do get to the catch, then we have an error. We probably need to update our, let's update our enum to add an error case for that. Go to our enum, let's go to our enum. Let's go to our app error enum. And right here, actually we have it already. Okay. Yes. No encoded error. We could have a description, like we haven't done a description yet. We could have, which we'll get to at some point. We'll create some sort of description here. Let's see. You guys could actually do that. We probably won't get to it for now, but you could go ahead and update your app error to conform to custom string convertible. And here we'll have description. For now, just simply return app error self. For now, just return app error self, but we'll come and we'll deal with each case later. Okay, we'll deal with each case. So case no data, return some string. That's probably more descriptive than just no data. We could become more descriptive there. What does that do for us? When I conform to custom string convertible, what does that do? What's that? It makes it more readable. Now I have access to description on my object. Right? On my object, I have access to description. It becomes more descriptive. I have now options to write in any description I want. But later, we'll come back to this. For now, this is not the objective. We'll come back to this to do handle more descriptive language for error cases. Okay. That'll answer your question. So the case no data, I could put in a more descriptive error message. And that'll get returned to like my alert controller. Yeah? All right. Okay. Objective again is to post. Let's make that post work. So let's go back here. In my catch, we have an encoding error already. So if I do get to the catch block, I'll handle that error with my encoding error. So encoding error. Yes, but we're not done yet. We haven't done the actual call yet. So now make post request or execute post. So now let's go ahead and execute the post request. We have our network helper net services, not today. Network helper shared perform data task. We pass in our request. We have some result type. What does our result type have from the network helper? What does it have? Everybody heard that, right? From my network helper, either I have data or I have an error, right? So network helper, either we have data or an app error. Either our completion captures data or an app error, okay? And it's a result type, so we use a switch on it to see what the case is. In that case, we check for failure first. Let app error. If it is an error, we simply pass it back to the view controller. Failure. And the view controller now has that error. It could do as it pleases. If we don't have a failure here, we simply say success. In that case, we don't need data here, so we're not going to use data. We simply say completion, success, true. Okay. We could do more things. We could say create an object like we did in the test to see if the title is the same title and return true for it. So we could do more there. Okay, so this is enough to test, to run our app, right? So we have our function. Well, we're not done with the view controller yet. We got to go back to the view controller, and we have to go to our to-do. We have a to-do in the view controller. In that to-do, we'll actually call that function. In that to-do, we'll actually call that function. And we should probably present, either way, we present an alert. Whether it was true or not, we could present an alert. But for now, we'll simply post that request. I'll keep it simple for now. I won't have an alert with an action. When you click on the action, it does something. We'll keep it very simple. Next week, we could build on it. Okay. We type in. We are good. More fingers.
Almost there.
The what?
I use all my fingers. I use them slowly. I taught myself how to type before I came.
That's awesome. So far, we see how post is more complicated, right? There's more moving parts there. But it's not that many moving parts. It's maybe like 4 or 5 lines of moving parts. Yeah. Okay, how are we doing? We good? Can we go over to our create view controller, create question? So going back to the create question, we have a to-do there. In the create question block, we have a to-do. Post a question. Let's go ahead and post a question. So we have our lab question API client. On it, we have post question. Post question expects a question. We pass it a question. It has a completion block. Same result type. That result type just follows us until, right? Okay, so here we have our result type. We switch on it. And this is where we know if our post worked or not. So here we have our result. First off, we have our error case. How come my question? Okay, so we have a switch, we have a failure, we have app error. We'll dispatch. Why am I dispatching back to main? Because using URL session, we're on a global thread, right? So anything we're doing with UI, meaning we're about to show an alert is a UI action, we need to dispatch back to main. So here I want to say self dot, now I need to say self dot show alert. It's required here. And what I want to say is post error. And we could give it a message for now. Message will simply be the app error. Well, post error is not enough. Let's tell the user something. Error posting question or something. Error posting question, message is app error. Cool. We'll grab that code there. We'll copy that code and go to our success case. In the success case, don't need my variable here. I'll simply say, sorry, apologies. In my success case, I will simply say success posting or question was successfully posted. Cool. So here I have message. I don't need to pass in, let's see. I could simply just say success or success. Do we have the question title? Yes, we do. I could say title, question title was posted. Yes, thank you, Jahid. So Jahid said, now we're in a closure, we're capturing self, we need to do the weak thing, right? We need to. So here we need to create a capture list because now we have a strong reference. We're strongly referencing self in that closure, in that entire closure. So we need to go ahead and break that strong cycle. And the way we break it is using the capture list, weak self, and update ourselves to be optional, update self to be optional. The to-do is no longer a to-do. Anytime you're in a closure and you say self dot something, you capture in self, meaning the closure now has a reference back to the view controller. So to break that, we use a capture list to break that strong cycle. Right now, we could run the app. The app should work. We did not yet? I thought Yulia did that already. Okay, let's go ahead and connect that. I thought we connected it. Yeah, we did. Oh, the buttons. Oh, sorry. The actions. Yes, yes, yes. Let's go ahead and connect the actions. Keep that open for people still typing. And let's go ahead and connect our actions. We don't connect our actions, nothing will happen. Create. And let's get some more space there. Where will we type in? Let's just add the actions and you guys will finish type. Actions. We need an action, so drag your cancel action over to your cancel button, right? Drag your cancel over to your cancel, and drag your create question over to your create button. Cool. And let us get some more space here so we type more. Where were we typing? We were typing down here, right? Where were we? Here? Okay. Keep typing there. Somebody could actually go ahead and, oh. When we successfully run the app and create a post, we'll take a very short break, and we'll come back and do refresh control, and then we'll end here for the day. Anybody can confirm that you could post while people are still typing here? Was anybody able to run the app and create a post? If you have an error, you should be able to read the error in the alert view there. Okay, I'll go ahead and try while we type in. No volunteers yet. I'll run the app. It works, right? Thank you, sir. I owe you lunch. I don't owe you lunch. I owe Ben Benito lunch, not you. Thank you, though. Thank you so much, sir. I will get you lunch one day. Okay, so let's go ahead and add. Let me add some posts here.
As we all are adding and posting, will they all populate
On the table view, yes. So we'll come back from the short break, and we'll add a refresh control so that we don't have to run the app every time. We could pull to refresh. But let's go ahead and try to create a question here. Can't see my images. Tried everything, but really don't know what's going on. All right. So I created some question here. I select image and error handling. I click on create. And look at that. Beautiful. Success. Can't see my images was posted. I click OK. And I go over, I run the app again because we don't have refresh yet. I'll run the app again. After the break, we'll add the refresh control.
Should it be that create also like?
Oh, we don't have it sorted yet. Okay, so it's at the bottom here. I can't see my images. Got created twice. Weird. That's a bug there.
Okay, so when we create, it doesn't like automatically go back to.
We will fix all that.
But it does get created.
It did get created. We also need to do sort by date. Right? So we also need to do sort by date. But when we come back, we'll do sort by date and we'll do pull to refresh. We'll take a very short break, and we'll come back. Thank you.